Welcome back to another opportunity to learn, grow, and come back to the power that resides within each of us that is just there to be uncovered. And you are not doing this alone, you are doing this as part of an entire community of people who are also looking to learn, grow, and evolve themselves, including myself, because I'm doing it every day. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we spoke about boundaries and why they are so important. Being able to say yes to yourself and no to another person so that you are not saying no to yourself and yes to another person, so that you can get your space back, your time back, and your energy back. And as a result, trust yourself that you're showing up for you instead of bleeding your energy to things and people that you don't want to bleed your energy to. This is coming back into alignment with yourself. You could listen to yourself more because you have more space to do it, and you'll have more energy as a result. You'll have that full cup instead of being depleted by giving it to everybody else or to other things that really you don't want to give them to. However, we didn't dive into the how of setting boundaries and some of the things that can come up as a result of learning about boundaries and actually setting the boundaries. So I want to dive into the how, and I want to dive into some of the things that might come up for you that you can expect and that are normal in this video. So to explain how to set boundaries, really I want to share examples so that you can get real world scenarios of what setting boundaries actually looks like. In the act of actually setting boundaries, it's quite straightforward, right? It's just expressing a no to somebody. It's the emotion that can come up as a result of setting boundaries that is the challenging part. But with time, it could become much easier, all right? But we'll get to that. For the actual setting of boundaries, I'm going to give you a few examples, and then I'm going to break down what are the three kind of steps involved with setting boundaries that makes them effective and makes them clear, okay? So the first boundary story that I have is probably near to just about everybody's life, and that is boundaries that I'm setting with my parents, specifically with my mom, okay? So in about 2018, summer of 2018, if you followed, my story so far, I had another experience of really intense anxiety. I was really disconnected from myself, very foggy up here, and it made it really difficult to go about certain parts of my life. In this time frame, my mom had a friend who had a son who was experiencing really intense anxiety, perhaps even at a level that was even more intense than what I was experiencing. Now, during this time, I was keeping my anxiety private. I was not sharing it with my mom. And she, continuously throughout this summer, was asking me to reach out to this person, to give them help, to share the tools that I had learned my previous experience with anxiety in 2014. Every time that she brought it up, I would say, no, I don't have the time for this, I don't want to do this, I can't do this right now. And she would continuously bring it up, right? And I would feel more anxious as a result. It would trigger me. I would get caught in my negative feedback loops. Then my anxiety would get more intense. It was not good. So as time went on, I was able to get clearer with setting my boundaries. And what I told my mom was, Mom, I recognize that you care about this person. I recognize that you care about his mother as well, and that you want him to feel better and not get caught up in this anxiety. And I, right now, cannot get involved with doing that. I'm not clear myself. It's triggering for me, and I just don't have the space and the time to really dive into that. It's not good for me, and I need you to respect that, right? That was the boundary. And then I just said, thank you for actually listening to this boundary. I don't want to go through this conversation again. I would like to set this boundary and move forward. So that is my first scenario, right? Setting a boundary with our parents, which can be often the most challenging. The second experience that I have is setting a relationship boundary, right? In early 2021, I started seeing a new person, and I didn't really want to dive into a committed relationship. I knew that I wanted to keep things light. And so from the beginning, I wanted to set clear intentions so that we can know that we're on the same level as to where we were headed and what we wanted to experience. So the way that I went about this boundary was I said, hey, like I have a really good time with you. You have great energy. We have a lot of fun. And it's a good time. And I want you to know that I am not interested in being in a committed relationship right now. And that I'm here more in a lighthearted tone where we can continue to have fun and enjoy each other's company, but I don't want to get caught up in being in a committed relationship. And as a result of me sharing this boundary, hopefully we could be on the same level and have clear expectations and intentions as to what we can experience going forward. And this clear communication actually really helped the relationship because there was no guessing games about what might be or what could be. It was very clear. Setting clear boundaries, it allows both people to feel very comfortable because they know where each person's coming from, okay? The third boundary is a simple one. This is setting boundaries with friends. Now, when I was younger, I grew up in a town where everybody liked to go drinking Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night. Myself, I'm not much of a drinker, right? In my college years, freshman year aside, my college years, I wanted to read. I was really getting into self-development, watching documentaries, and I was diving into myself. And so some of my friends, they wanted me to drink with them, right? And so they would constantly ask me, just come out, come on, have a couple drinks with us. And so I had to be very clear on my boundaries of saying, and this is the boundary, I know that you guys want to hang out, I know that you want to connect, and I want to connect with you and hang out, and I do not want to drink. I want to take this time to connect with myself and dive into some of the things that I'm interested in. And perhaps going forward, like next week, we can get together, we can get pizza, or we can do something together that we both are interested in. And that was the boundary, right? So there's 3 pieces to the boundaries that I'm sharing, right? And you gotta get creative with them, right? And you have to share from what's true for you, being clear on what you want. But there's 3 pieces. Number 1 is it's always great to acknowledge the other person in setting your boundary. For example, with my friends that were asking me to go out drinking, hey, I know that you want to connect, I know that you want to, get together and have a good time. That makes them feel seen, and that allows them to receive your boundary with clarity and not feeling like they're being shut out or kind of attacked. Acknowledging them, okay? Number 2 is setting your boundary, being clear on what you want going forward and sharing that with them. In the case of my mom, with the, her asking me to be a part of this other person's life to help them get through anxiety, I had to share, I am not at a place where I can be of service to another person, right? And I explain that in a creative way. The third piece, right, is just kind of looking forward or saying thank you to the person for acknowledging and listening to your boundary. Or in the case of me setting a boundary with my friends about drinking, I said, yeah, like maybe we can get together this week. We could do something a little bit more, aligned with both of our interests instead of drinking. And those are the 3 pieces, right? So setting it is pretty straightforward. It's when the emotion comes up, maybe the guilt or the shame that comes up when we're setting boundaries, that becomes more difficult. And that's what I want to talk about next, right? What kind of challenges can we expect as we are learning how to set boundaries? Well, actually, you know what? I want to change that. What kind of results can we expect as we're setting boundaries? We're going to do that question first, then we'll get to the other one. When we are setting boundaries, we can come up across people who are very accepting of the boundaries, right? Are respectful of your boundaries. And then we can come up against people who are not respectful of your boundaries, right? And so when I was growing up, when I was setting boundaries kind of intuitively as a child in my really early years with my mom, I would be met very often with anger and then silence, right? Where she would get upset with the fact that I was sharing, that something wasn't working for me. And maybe, I could have set boundaries better back then, but, I was young. I didn't really know. So when I was setting these boundaries with my mom and she responded that way, I was learning from a very early age that setting boundaries equals pain, or setting boundaries equals, a person not talking to you or a person getting angry. And so I would shut out and I wouldn't want to actually set those boundaries, right? And so as I got older, I didn't want to set boundaries with people because I didn't want to be met with somebody shutting me out and not wanting to talk to me anymore, somebody getting angry with me. I didn't want to experience those things. And so I would just not set boundaries and instead just say yes to please them so that I wouldn't have to deal with that pain. And that can come up as we're learning to set boundaries now. Feeling guilty for setting the boundary, feeling shameful for setting the boundary, feeling afraid of setting the boundary. These are all natural emotions that can come up as we are actually setting the boundary. And when they actually do come up and we come across our own emotions, even if the other person is accepting of our boundaries, we could work with that emotion ourselves, becoming aware of it, right? Breathing, changing our physiological state, recognizing where that guilt is coming from, maybe from an early age if you had a similar experience as me. And then we could say to ourselves, yes, I know that this was a previous experience that I had and that this pain came up. However, I'm choosing to go about things differently now. I recognize that setting boundaries is really healthy for myself. And even if the other person experiences anger towards us, I know that setting boundary for myself is more important than if this person is getting angry with us. And then that can be another conversation. We could work through something with that person later, right? But working through this is extremely helpful because it will help us to not get caught up in the guilt or shame, and we'll be able to set the boundary with more confidence and with more clarity. Again, coming from this aligned, powerful place because we know that we're showing up for ourselves. Also, if somebody is getting angry with you or really, kind of nasty with you for setting that boundary, you can ask yourself, right, do I want to continue to have somebody in my life or to spend as much time with a person who is not respecting what I really need for myself, what is nutritious for me so that I can, show up as a better person? Do we want to spend as much time with this person, right? And if we do, then maybe we could work on it with them. If we don't, then maybe we could start to move away from, using our time with that person and use our time with somebody who is respecting of our boundaries, right? Who is respecting the things that we need for ourselves. That's really going towards our greater good so that we can connect with ourselves, we can become clear with ourselves, so that we can live that happier quality life that we want, right? It's an important question to ask yourself, and it does come up. So the other question that I want to answer here is, what other challenges can come up as we're learning about boundaries and we're setting boundaries? What things can come up other than the guilt and the shame that we talked about? Well, from a personal perspective, I had a hell of a lot of anger buried within me that exploded once I learned that boundaries were a thing. The reason being is because I found that the anger within me that was suppressed whenever I was saying yes to another person when really I was saying no to myself. AKA, when I was engaging in people pleasing, recognizing that I was just giving my energy and time away even though I didn't want to other people, I had that anger that was a result of that was suppressed, and it came up over the period of time that I was learning to set these boundaries. Anger towards myself for not standing up for myself, for not saying no when I needed to for my own good. And then also anger towards people for taking advantage of the fact that I was always saying yes and that they were just kind of robbing me, even if it wasn't their intention, right? Robbing me of my my resources, right? And that was extremely challenging to move through. However, again, using kind of the meditation and the cognitive behavioral therapy, I was able to change my state when this anger arose and process it. It had never been processed in the past because it was suppressed. And so now, as it was coming up, kind of like a volcano, I was able to see it, become aware of it, and then breathe with it and recognize it and apologize to myself and recognize that I was going to change the way that I was showing up for myself going forward, so that I was always saying yes to myself, right? And so that this anger would not show up for myself. And this, took a couple months for me to process, and then it started to, really feel good again, because you start to process it and it leaves your body. Once you let go of these things that you're holding down that have been there for probably an entire lifetime, once you let go of that, again, coming back to your power, because you have so much energy freed up for other parts of life instead of the energy that was holding on to the anger, right? Anger is a very low vibration, a very low quality energy. So when you let go of it, it's making room, a larger capacity for that richness, those higher quality emotions and energies that we could, be a part of. Love and trust within ourselves, right? Things like that, joy. These are all natural experiences to come across, and it's okay to have, negative emotions and those negative feelings in our bodies as a result of going through and learning boundaries. It's okay as long as we process it, we recognize it, because we're going to get to that point where setting boundaries is clear and it's easy, it's okay. And our energy is going to go skyrocket up because, again, we're making room for energy for ourselves and the things that we want to work on and the people that we want to be in relationship with. We're going to have that energy to flourish in those places. And so, again, it's normal. I want to say that 1,000 times for these experiences to come up. It's just a matter of working through them, using things like cognitive behavioral therapy, using things like journaling so we can become aware of the things that are happening to us, and then changing our reaction to these emotions to responses, creating new responses, creating how we want to show up instead of just operating on autopilot and reacting to what has been the case in the past. You are walking into, as you create each boundary, a higher version of yourself. That's what you're doing, because you have the space, you have the time, you have the energy to be creating what it is that you want for yourself, instead of getting caught up in what other people want to create and giving your energy and time to creating their lives, right? And it's okay to help other people create their lives, as long as you want to, right? Again, coming from here, coming from this, the authentic self, where you're listening, is it a yes or is it a no? If this content was of value to you, let me know. If you're getting caught up somewhere, you want to have a conversation on something, I understand this is a tricky topic, and it's something that plays a part in most people's, if not everybody's life. So let's have a conversation about it. If you are cool with it being public, drop it in the comments below, and then we can have a whole group of people commenting and having a conversation about it. If you want it to be private, then you could reach out to me on Instagram or Facebook and we could talk through it. If you want to really, really dive into this, I am now available for coaching, one-on-one coaching, so that we could work through things together and have more of a very one-on-one intimate experience, so that we can partnership in your growth, have a partnership in your growth. If and only if you really liked this content, a like goes a long way and a subscription goes a long way, but only if you really enjoyed it. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, in the comments, on my Instagram, so that we can have a conversation and we could keep this ball rolling for us to live from the inner power that we have within us. Much love.